Hi, Elizabeth here, production assistant for the PodRocket podcast. Before we dive in, did you know that PodRocket is on YouTube? You can catch the full video versions of our episodes over on the LogRocket YouTube channel. Click the link in the description to tune in and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
I am the person that will review your report and say, okay, it's a vulnerability or it's not. And by looking to all the reports we have received in the last 3 years, most of them doesn't attack production servers. They attack developers.
Hi, and welcome to PodRocket, a web development podcast brought to you by LogRocket. LogRocket provides AI-first session replay and analytics, which surface the UX and technical issues impacting user experiences. Start understanding where your users are struggling by trying it for free at logrocket.com. I'm Paige Niedringhaus, and today we have Rafael Gonzaga, Node.js TSC member, here to talk about Node 24. In this episode, Rafael and I talk about all the highlights of what's new in Node version 24, how Node's upgraded V8 engine is dramatically improving app performance, and the inspiration that Node's taking from its competitors to give devs more of what they want. So here's our episode with Rafael Gonzaga. Welcome to the podcast, Rafael. We are happy to have you.
Hello.
And
Yeah, I'm happy to be
We're going to
here.
talk about Node 24, which has just entered the current release as the newest, latest, and greatest. So for people who are not as familiar with Node's release schedule, can you talk a little bit about what Node 24 is, how you guys do releases, what the basics are?
Node.js, the Node.js team, the Node.js release team, we normally ship 2 major versions of Node.js per year. One will be promoted to LTS after 6 months, and one will be end of life after 6 months. The reason we do that is to facilitate the development, because we can ship several major pull requests into the main branch, and it don't need to wait a year or 2 years to get out. So people can test it. And the recommendation, as most people normally do nowadays, is to use
Node
the
24 is the
LTS
new
versions
one,
only.
but Node 18 is actually going into end of life. So do you think that this will help get teams to start updating sooner than usual, or will people still hold back on the LTS only adoption?
Node.js 18 is end of life, but we have Node.js 20 and Node.js 22 as LTS active. Node.js 2020 is on maintenance mode, but still an LTS version. It receives secret patches. It just don't receive features anymore. So my recommendation is to go to Node.js 22. We wrote a package called Is My Node Vulnerable? Because one thing we learned is that people are using a lot of end-of-life versions of Node.js. Despite Node.js 16 being end of life for 2 years, people are still using that a lot, to be honest. It's almost the same. Now we look at the download graphs and almost the same as Node.js 20, because people just don't care about it, but they don't know that they are completely insecure. So my recommendation is, if you want to know if we're using an insecure version of Node.js, run npx is my node vulnerable, and it will tell you. It will display a prompt telling which version you should use, or if you are
always going to say you're vulnerable if it's an older version, right? So probably just update if you have
most of
been
the time
behind by a version or two. All right, so let's talk about some of the
Yeah.
updates to Node 24, some of the big exciting ones. So one of the ones that you mentioned in the changelog notes is that V8 is going to version 13.6, which gives us features like regex, escape, and error is error. So these are not necessarily APIs that developers may be as familiar with, but can you tell us a little bit about what kind of features they offer, as well as if there's a kind of a shift more towards more safety rails and precision tools in the Node ecosystem?
With this version of V8, other features appeared in the JavaScript development. We have regex, escape, we have error is error. Basically, these changes reflect a broader trend toward enhancing code safety and clarity in JavaScript. And despite that, we have also included, actually, with this V8 update, we have also included explicit resource management, which is a very cool feature, but no one talks about that. but they might be talking about it when Node.js 24 goes LTS. It's very cool.
Can you tell us a little bit
I
more
hope
about it
people
so
use it
people will
more
know
often.
what's good about it?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that people usually do is imagine you have a handler, you do a try catch, and then you have a finally after that. Usually the finally is to clean up the resource. So if I open a file, I will clean up in the final. Regardless if that fails or it goes in the success, I need to close that file. However, I normally do try catch finally. And with this explicit resource management, you don't need to close it anymore. When that object goes out of scope, the resources are automatically cleaned up. The thing is, the feature needs to implement that. And Node.js, the test runner, already implements it. It's a cool feature,
Nice.
and
So it's
we
just a
need
little
to
bit of
chat
garbage
more about
collection that
that.
the developers don't have to think about. That's awesome. So another thing
Yeah,
that is
kind
new
of,
about
yes.
this particular version is that URL pattern is now global. Could you tell us a little bit more about what this means for developers and like how they can take advantage of it?
So the Node.js already used the URL pattern that we have exposed globally. The difference is that it was only internal usage of Node.js. So if you use HTTP, we are using URL pattern. The only change we did here is to make it globally available. So it simplifies the usage. It making it more foundational tool for routing in modern applications. I don't expect people to use it very often, but behind frameworks, if you use Express or if you use Fastify, they might be using it in a near future. You possibly won't touch
So
it
it's more
directly.
like a
It's a
thing that
nice
the
to have.
framework authors will be able to take advantage of. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. So another thing is
yeah, correct.
Unidigi 7 ships in this release, and this is Node's HTTP client kind of getting more beefy or more powerful. Do you think that we're approaching a point where third-party applications or libraries like Axios might not really be needed anymore?
Yes, definitely. With the fetch adoption, fetch is also one of the features that Unity ships. If you are concerned about cross-platform support, if you want your code to run in Node.js in the backend and also in the front end, Node.js supports most of the features. So if you use fetch, you can also use fetch on Node.js. So you can definitely replace Axios. But however, Axios remains popular due to its broader browser compatibility and more familiar API. People are used to use Axios, and it's fine. The one thing important to mention here is that people think they want a more compatibility, but they also wonder why this feature is not so fast as it should be. The reason usually is that we follow specifications, right? When you follow specification, you can't deviate from that. Otherwise, you won't be browser compatible. So it makes the performance of a specific feature too restrict. For instance, fetch is fast is okay. I wouldn't call it fast. But if you want a more faster approach to make requests, Undigi also ships a request module for that. So if you want to send a lot of requests faster, you use that feature. You can't complain that fetch is not faster because we are just following this spec. If you want something faster, just
Got it.
use
That's
something more
great
specific
advice.
to
So
Node.js.
NPM 11 is landing with this release. Did anything about NPM jump out as a kind of quality of life improvement for developer workflows?
If I remember correctly, NPM 11 introduced faster installs, some security checks, and the dash dash ignore script now applies to all lifecycle scripts. But it shouldn't impact developers' life. It's more about NPM developers maintenance. They have introduced some breaking changes, but